It's a Bitcoin capitalist show. We have Ladislas from the Wandering Investor. This guy does more traveling than me. He's all over the world, multiple residency. He's like the next generation nomad capitalist, and he's calling in from Switzerland. So, what's your story? What's the secret? How did you, start on this path of, entrepreneurship all over the world?
Yeah, so I don't quite have that background initially. So I studied in Canada for my undergrad, went to grad school in Australia, and then I got a comfy corporate job in Switzerland for Nestle, and then they expatriated me to Africa for 7 years. So for 7 years, I was in charge of various businesses for Nestle in across the continent. So I traveled all over, which was really interesting. But then at the age of 30, after having spent most of my 20s in Africa, I wanted to discover something else. So my thinking was at that point to leave, go traveling for a little bit, and then go and try to find a new job in Dubai. So that was the plan. So I went to Oman, so which is a country near the UAE, near Dubai, and drove from Oman to Paris by car. So going through all of Iran, Armenia, Georgia, all of Turkey, Greece, up to Ukraine, and then to Paris. And it was the first time that I had two things. One is time, and two is money, because I had savings from being an expat for 7 years. And it was quite a wonderful feeling in the sense that I had time to explore opportunities. So as I was traveling around, I'd go to real estate agencies. I would look at listings. I'd go for viewings. I'd talk to lawyers. I'd run some numbers. And then, I'd compare the various countries and I'd be like, this is interesting. This market has potential. And so I started flipping apartments, thinking, oh, I'm just going to do, one or two flips, and then I'll start sending CVs to Dubai. I never sent CVs to Dubai, and since then I've been a full-time investor. So I manage my own money now, travel all over the world, and make deals a bit everywhere.
Wow. Now, my question, where in Africa were you working?
So 4 years in Johannesburg in South Africa, and then 3 years. My last role was based in Ghana, and I was in
Oh,
charge
wow.
of the dairy business for Ghana, Ivory Coast, Sierra Leone, and Liberia. So proper,
You've done
frontier
some
markets.
serious adventure traveling and living. How was like your experience living in like Ghana? I haven't made it to Africa yet. Did you enjoy it? I'm interested.
Yeah, I mean, look, it was tough because just like long working hours, and then operationally, Africa is not it's not Switzerland. Things don't
Yeah.
just work. So you're constantly it's just chaos mode the whole time. So you're constantly fighting fires, and you operate in an environment, and this is something that's typically very hard um, for Westerners because we're not used to this. But I've learned to embrace it, where you operate in an environment with very little data, right?
Mhm.
So you're making a lot of strategic decisions based on experience, based on gut feel, based on what you think is an insight, but you don't have a lot of data to back up your decisions. So it's a very different type of
Now, do you
business.
think Africa has a lot of opportunity, or it's just too chaotic and they lack the infrastructure? And with all the inflation, is going to be kind of a crazy place to be living going forward.
A ton of opportunity. Really a ton of opportunity. Some of these economies are doing extremely well, like in Ivory Coast, for example. There's a lot to do. The continent needs skills. So if you show up there and you have skills and capital and a bit of street smarts, you can do very well. And tolerance for ambiguity. I think that's a big one because people come from Western countries, they arrive in markets in Africa and they want everything to be perfect and this and that. It's just no,
Mhm.
you're constantly going to be dealing with ambiguity. So you need to embrace ambiguity.
Yeah, I've had a little bit of that working in Latin America. Uh, You got to be
Yeah.
creative and thick-skinned, dealing with certain things that you're the comfort and fastness of everything in the United States, and then you go south, and it's like no one even works on the weekend. Um, so, what residencies do you hold?
So I have Mexican permanent residency. I have Panamanian temporary residency for now, and Paraguayan temporary residency for now, as well as some semi-active Ukrainian residency, but that one
Yeah.
hasn't served
So
me
I
too
got I
well.
got the Panama residency and the Paraguayan. And as I was saying, I got the Panamanian residency, 2 weeks before it ended. Like I finalized it. All these people were rushing to get it.
Well done.
And I just thank God I did it. And I didn't want to wait around because I knew Paraguay had a super easy residency. I finished that a month after they changed it to temporary residency. So my question, so you didn't do obviously the Panama friendly nation. Are you doing where you create the company and like hire yourself in Panama?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. And that's
Essentially,
like,
work permit for friendly nations.
and what's that take? It takes like 2 years of
Yeah,
working for a company there, and
yeah.
then you get temporary. I
So
think it
two and
was
a
a
half years.
I think it was a huge blunder by the Panamanian government getting rid of the friendly nations visa because it brought in so many international people. They were spending money, come and stay there, partying, and then that whole thing evaporated. And my attorney that processed me on the friendly nations visa told me that like they were processing 10 to 15 people a week. Now it's like maybe they do that a year with people actually doing the real estate investment. And I know they had like the price was like something like 450,000. No one was going for it, so they lowered it down to like 350. The whole program's a failure, in my opinion. And I've asked a lot of people about like why did they end this program, and no one has like a perfect answer. But kind of what I've come to is their real estate market wasn't doing good because of COVID and all this money had left. They have all these projects everywhere. And my understanding was like they were trying to do like an inverse bailout of real estate where all these people were, all these expats are coming here only spending a couple $1,000s for the residency. Let's make them buy real estate. But, most people don't want to be tied into, this real estate market. So no one went for it. So I think they were trying to get people to invest in the real estate market. And I know you're heavy into foreign real estate, but I'm kind of firm in my stance that like right now Panama and Paraguay have massive real estate bubbles because a lot of these buildings are empty, they're overpriced, and a lot in those markets the real estate doesn't make a lot of sense. A lot of other Latin countries there's a lot of opportunity, but like I think some of these places are overvalued right now. What do you think about that?
Look, it depends from what angle you're looking at it, because the function of Panamanian and Paraguayan real estate is not a typical real estate function, in that typically people buy real estate to either live there or they buy real estate because they want to rent it out to make healthy returns. So typically that's what people buy real estate for. But in Panama and in Paraguay, a lot of the real estate is driven by foreign inflows of money that are seeking security and safety, right? So they're looking at return of capital, not return on capital, because they invest coming from jurisdictions where they perceive the risk to be much higher. So if you're from Argentina, it's a bit of a no-brainer to buy something in Paraguay, because at least there's a bit more liquidity, the prices are more stable, the currency is more stable, etc. And no capital controls or less capital controls to take money in and out of the country. Same thing if you're Colombian, you probably don't want to be all in Colombia. Like personally, I like Colombia. I have investments in Colombia, but would I go all in Colombia? Absolutely not. But for a Colombian who's essentially all in Colombia, having real estate in Panama makes complete sense, because again, the objective is not the objective that you and I, Travis, are looking for, where we want to buy something, put it on Airbnb or rent out long term, make some good rental
So
income.
you're saying people are parking money into
Yeah,
these real estates, and they have all
yeah.
cash, and they care less if it goes down 30%.
Well, it doesn't go down because a lot of these people are not sellers. they're not selling. Like they bought not to sell or speculate. They just bought it so that it just kind of stays. And you
Mhm.
just have they're just building more and more buildings, and people are buying to
Yeah.
for safety and also to launder
Well,
money. I
I'm
mean,
just
and that
saying, yeah, to launder money, but I'm just saying, like in Panama, it's like all the expats have dried. When I first started going down there, I've been going down there for a long time. I made some friends. I've been going down to party, and then international hubs. Whenever I go anywhere else in Latin America, I was always stop for a day or two. And the whole dynamic of that country has just changed. I've been going about 8 years, and for the worse. And like when I went down, it was like they had a lot of party. It was super international. They had all this gambling. They started implementing this tax on the gambling gains, and they kind of ruined the industry and all the international people that would come in to gamble. So that industry got killed. Then COVID happened. They had probably behind Australia the second worst lockdown. Men and women were allowed out certain days of the week. They shut every business down. There was no PPP money. And 70% of all the restaurants went out of business. And if you weren't a resident or national, you couldn't even visit the country for 2 years. And on a country that was all tourism, so that really hurt the economy. And then they open back up. They get rid of the friendly nations visa, so all the people that want to get the residencies and invest pretty much disappear. And the price of food and living there, it's for Latin America, it's very expensive. Like you're not escaping California prices going to Panama or Costa Rica. And so I've kind of been like documenting this. I was like, I don't know how the people there are affording any of this. With their wages are horrible. I had a friend that was working for like United Airlines, the Panama division, and it's criminal, what they're paying them. You can't live on it. So a lot of the middle class Panamanians I know have left Panama for like Canada. They get the student visas or Spain, and they're all dipping out because the opportunity, isn't there. And you see a lot of the unrest that's happening, right now. And it's over this mining contract. I think it's just a straw that broke the camel's back. I think it's this overall economy, the inflation, the cost of living there. And they were having these protests, the previous year where they were shutting the roads down, and it was pretty bad. But what happened is the government came in and they did price controls on basic food, medicine, or whatever, and it got the protests to stop. But I made a video. I was like, price controls are just the beginning of the end because you're just getting rid of free market. I know that people that own the pharmacies, they're like, well, if we can't make a profit on this item, we're just not going to carry it. So you start getting down that path. And I'm like, this is very troubling. And I had to make a big investment decision between Panama and Paraguay, and I chose Paraguay, and I was kind of second guessing myself for a minute. And then, Panama's been shut for 3 weeks. My, business there is down 95%. So I, feel good about making, that gut decision and going with, Paraguay over Panama right now. So
well done.
I don't know if you have any input on that situation, or because you've been probably going down there for a while too.
Yeah, I mean, look. There's a reason Latin America is not rich. It's because of things like this. When things are going a bit too well for a country, like they were doing for Panama, because I mean, objectively, Panamanians don't really have to work. They get it's like a Gulf country. They don't get oil money. They get toll money from the canal. So whenever things go a little bit too well in one of these countries, then people do something like this. It's just the normal cycle of things in
Well, like
Latin America.
what happened in the last protest was someone released like a document, and it had all the government employees, and it was like 60% or something of the whole entire country. And it had like these no-show jobs. So like if someone was in government and all your relatives, it wasn't a lot of money, but you would get these little like $500 a month checks, and it was just like everyone is on the toll, and that the system of what they make off the tolls from the canals isn't supporting everyone having a no-show job. So, and it's just very sad because Panama has so much potential, and what's crazy, you look at El Salvador right now, there is a lot of hype around El Salvador. I'll admit that, but they're heading in the right directions. And
Have you been to El Salvador?
What?
Have you been to El
I have
Salvador?
personally not. I'm going this year, but you can see all the stuff that's happening and the energy. And I have a lot of friends that live there. I'm going and talking about it. And if I'm sitting in Panama and these other countries, and you're just watching this economic miracle unfold in El Salvador, and under good leadership, and you're sitting there, and you guys got all the resources in the world, and you guys are just having this stagnant declining economy. People are going to get frustrated, and they're going to want change. And like, I think you're starting to see it in Argentina with the election of Javier Milei. People have had it, at 140% inflation. What do you got to lose, betting your money on a libertarian? So, and if Javier Milei can pull off what he says he's going to pull off, it's going to be extremely volatile. But I think it could pave the way for other, Latin American, countries kind of following the same path.
We'll see. We'll see. Look, I mean, Argentina. I mean, first El Salvador. I'm going there in a few weeks, so I might see you there.
Oh, wow.
As
Okay.
well.
Yeah, I might go down for a few weeks. Are you going for anything in specific, or it's just a trip plan?
To check out real estate to see. Yeah,
I know the real estate's been going up, so I don't know. You might be paying a premium now. Prices are going up, but I think El Salvador has the potential to be the next Singapore of Latin America, potentially, if they keep riding this wave and Bitcoin works out.
Yeah, we'll see. I don't know. With regards to Argentina, look, I like a lot of what the guy is saying when it comes to reforms. That's great. But what I'm very highly skeptical of is his foreign policy, in the sense that Argentina's primary issue is that it has a current account deficit. It always lacks dollars. It always lacks foreign exchange, foreign currencies. That's the core issue. And then what he's doing with this foreign policy is alienating China, just as Argentina is about to join BRICS. So, that's kind of goodbye, big source of potential funding. So
yeah, I saw that. That didn't make any sense. I'm like, you're just going to stop trading with all your top partners. It didn't make any
sense. And then going around and being all pro-Trump and things like that when, the current administration in the US is not pro-Trump. So how is he going to get help from the IMF? I don't know. So I'm a bit, I hope he just tones down the foreign policy rhetoric and just focuses on internal
we'll
matters.
See how much, obviously,
yeah.
When you're getting elected, there's a lot of bravado, and you got to say, the crazier, the more attention you get. So we'll see if he actually implements it. And obviously, he's not stupid, and he wants to get reelected and make it work. So we'll probably, forget that. But if they, my question is if they dollarize, right, and they're getting rid of the peso, won't there be a short term, because he doesn't take office for 3 weeks, the peso could collapse in that 3 weeks, because everyone's going to be dumping it in anticipation. They could really lose control of the current, 140% now. They could really lose control of the currency situation with hey, we're getting rid of this currency. How do you smoothly transition to dollars? How are people going to exchange for dollars? I mean, there's a lot of complicated, questions, with doing this, and can they pull it off smoothly? And, all you have to think, the other half of the country didn't vote for him. And, there could be protests, and especially, if you rip the Band-Aid off, there's going to be a lot of short-term economic pain. And, it is a welfare state right now. So they subsidize the subway, the buses, all this stuff. And he's like, hey, we're ending this. People's bus fares and all this stuff are going to triple, quadruple overnight. You're going to have a lot of unhappy, campers in the end. But I do think this is what Argentina needs. They need someone like this that's going to come in and, that knows economics and is going to, change things for the better. But it's going to be horrific, I think, in the short term. But this is the same thing. If someone came in the United States and was like, hey, back in the day, we're going to raise interest rates, we're going to get rid of all this stuff, it would have crashed the economy and been horrible in the short term, but it would have been great for the country in the long term. And in the U.S., pretty much, we always take the path of least resistance. We don't do any of the hard economic, changes that we need. And we just keep sputtering around until the whole thing is going to collapse down the road where, politicians, they want to get reelected. They're not willing to make, hard short-term decisions that are going to, hurt people in the short term. So that's, that's what most politicians are doing. They're just trying to get reelected, and they're not doing the hard things that are going to cause, short-term economic pain, but long-term, economic development. So
Yeah. But for sure, if he does the reforms he wants to do, it's a reset, which implies a big crash.
yeah.
Yeah, that's just by definition.
So now I just saw you were in Egypt. How was that, and what are the details on that?
Oh, Egypt. Yeah, I went there because a few things. So one, they launched a citizenship by investment program, a
Yeah.
bit like Turkey. So Turkey, if you invest $400,000 in local real estate, in any local real estate, you can get citizenship for yourself and your family, so your spouse and your underage children within a few months. So that's pretty cool. And Egypt has just launched a similar program, but with a minimum investment amount of $300,000. So
Okay.
essentially, you can just go to Egypt, and real estate's dirt cheap. Cairo is one of the cheapest capital cities in the world. I think like one of the top 5 cheapest capital cities in the world for a city of 20 million people. That is expected to grow to, I think, over 35 million in the next like 20, 30 years.
Now, are you
So
taking them up off on that offer, or were you just exploring it?
I was just exploring. I was just exploring. Yeah.
Now, did you
Yeah.
feel safe in Egypt? What was the vibe there?
Yeah. Yeah. Sure.
Okay.
Why would I not feel safe?
Okay. Just um, and how? I mean, obviously that's a volatile kind of place right now with everything going on. Now, did you get Montenegro residency? And I'm not up to date on it. Did they end that program?
No, it's still active. The only thing with Montenegro residency is to be able to renew it. If you want to renew, you need to stay in the country for 6 months every year.
Oh, so it's not a
Um,
no-show residency anymore.
Yeah, not anymore. But you can every year show up and do a year one again, which is fine. So you can always have residency if you want.
Now,
It's
what's the
just a bit of paperwork.
initial criteria to get residency in Montenegro?
Two ways. One is just own property, which I have in Montenegro. So anytime I want Montenegrin residency, if I want it for whatever reason, like KYC or whatever, I just go there and within a month I have my residency card. The other way is just to create a company, a local company, employ yourself, pay some payroll taxes, stuff like that, and then you get residency this way.
What do you know
So
what the
it's
minimum investment for the company is?
it's like setting it up is like $1,500, and then running costs a year, including taxes, is like I don't know 2K.
Okay. So it's
Yeah,
very,
it's like
very doable. Now, where in
yeah.
Montenegro do you own property?
In a few places in Tivat as well as so that's on the coast near Porto Montenegro, and in Nikšić in the it's a large city, well, large for Montenegro, near the national parks in the more in the near the
Okay.
mountains.
Now, what type of property did you buy? Apartment, land?
By the coast apartment with sea views, and inland a house with a large plot of land and a river and all that. So
Now, do
that
you
one's
rent that
purely
out
lifestyle.
or like Airbnb that? Like, what do you do with that property?
So so I did quite a lot of flips in Montenegro. The one I kept in Tivat, actually my parents ended up crashing there. They came to visit me when I was doing flips, and then they
They
never
liked
left,
it.
and they decided to retire there.
Oh, wow. That was a good flip then. No, because I
Well,
looked online. I haven't been to Montenegro, but I looked online. The real estate looks extremely affordable, and you got the European climate and the oceans. It looks absolutely gorgeous. Where like, I'm in California. It's like 1.5 million gets you a shack inland, and I'm
yeah,
like, spend $1 million there, you're living large.
yeah, yeah. No, it's nice. It's very nice. I love Montenegro. I spent all my summers there. I spent a few months every year in Montenegro.
Okay. Yeah, no, that was kind of on when I did the Panama Paraguay. That was the two things I had next were the Montenegro, but they kind of changed the residency, and I'm like, oh, I'm not going to live there for 6 months. And then I'm still looking at maybe doing the Armenian residency, and I have a couple of friends from Paraguay. They did the Armenian residency. It's very easy. It's similar, no show residency. Now, have you been to Armenia yet?
Yeah, I lived there when I was a child for a year,
Oh
so I'm
wow,
quite familiar with the place. Yeah,
you're in like
went to
you're
high
in.
school here.
Oh wow.
Did a year of high
Uh,
school there. Yeah.
so you never thought of going back and getting the residency, or
I mean, I drove through there on that big road trip. I mean, it's nice. I like Armenia. It's just I'm not too sure what the purpose is of Armenian residency.
well,
Just
it's kind of like flag theory, where you're, placing a flag in all these different places. So when you get residency, what are you looking for? You're not planting a flag. You want a place you can invest in. Why would you say that about Armenia? Is that like, what are you looking for when you get residency?
I mean, it's like, what would Armenian residency bring to the table? I mean, potentially, I guess, if I didn't have any other residencies, if I wanted something simple,
Mhm.
to show a utility bill and a residency card to
Mhm.
banks, for example, that could be the purpose of an Armenian residency. But in terms of being able to invest in Armenia, you don't need residency. You can
Okay.
just, buy real estate outright as a foreigner. You can own a company outright as a foreigner. So business is open in Armenia as a foreigner. So the purpose of the residency, I guess what plan B, but do you want a plan B in a country that just you know
Is
has
that
been
war?
getting its butt kicked in wars for
No,
the past 3 years?
I said the same thing. Like I did the Panama Paraguay, and then I had friends that were getting it, and I was like, I really don't want to spend extra money and do the trip. And I was like, who knows if they even will be a country in a couple of years? Like they're on the losing end right now in a bad neighborhood, and for Plan B, that's probably not the best region in the world for your Plan B. And I'm like, if you're, one of those paranoid guys thinks things are going to go crazy, I'm like, Paraguay is the best residency. It's the
Yeah,
middle of South America, ton of agriculture, cheap. It's got everything, going on for it. If you just want to get out of town and things go crazy, that's my like backup plan is Paraguay. If things go crazy, dollar crashes, whatever you want to say, I think Paraguay is going to be one of the best places to be. Panama, it's a little too high strung, and with the canal, geopolitically, geographically, that will be like a hot place. And there's a lot of tug of war between the U.S. and China behind the scenes there. But yeah, Paraguay is definitely Armenia. I'm like, if you're very experienced already, you're in multiple residencies, and you just want to add one to your belt, like that's kind of what Armenia is to me. How is like Turkey doing, and how's the economy? How's the real estate there? Is that country headed in the right direction? I've never been, so I'm just curious.
cool. So Turkey's a complex case. Turkey keeps making negative headlines. When you're a Westerner, you see Turkey headlines every month, on CNN, and they're invariably very negative, and it's always been like that. The reality is, it's a powerful country of 80 million people, with one of Europe's historical capitals, Istanbul, with one of the best connected cities in the world with in terms of airlines, a culture that has a lot of soft power in the emerging world through their culture, through their kind of brand of Islam, through TV. They are major exporters, lots of manufacturing in Turkey. It's a real economy of real people doing real things.
Okay.
Um, the core issue of Turkey has always been principally devaluation of its currency due to a persistent current account deficit, right? So that's the core issue. It's that Turkey always seems to import more than it exports, though it is an export powerhouse.
Mhm.
And what is the source of this, of all these imports? Like, what are they importing? Mostly energy. So Turkey's number one problem ultimately is that it imports all of its energy. And that hits its current account balance very strongly. So, what the current government has been working on for the past decade is working on Turkey's energy independence.
Mhm.
How? Two ways. One is by becoming a hub of energy trade. So, you see all of these pipelines coming from Iraq, coming from Iran, coming from Azerbaijan, coming from Russia. they all go through Turkey. So, if you don't produce oil and gas yourself, how about controlling its flow? That already helps. So that's one. And two, the government has been pushing heavy exploration with the private sector in the Black Sea for gas, and found a lot of gas. And in the Mediterranean, so that's a bit more jittery because there are counterclaims from other countries around. But essentially, Turkey is working really hard to cover its current account deficit. The second issue with Turkey is that historically, because of its location, it's a country that is historically often at war. Um, it's right there in the thick of things, and Turks are a proud people, and they don't like getting walked on. And once there's something that happens that they don't like in their neighborhood, they get involved. So people who choose to invest in a place like Turkey just need to be aware that there will be volatility, there will be negative headlines, but it shouldn't. They should remember that the country fundamentally has some very strong
So do you
assets.
think, obviously, like you're investing there, but do you think, Turkey's on the up and up and is a place, to put money? Or do you think geographically, with all the stuff going on in the Middle East, it could get caught up in a bunch of stuff, which will negatively affect, the economy and everyone?
Yeah, I mean, that's a strong possibility. It's all about position sizing, right? So if you told me I want to put, 30% of my assets in Turkey, I'd be like, you're crazy. Like, what are
Yeah.
you doing? No, but if you told me I want to put like 3% in Turkey, it's like, sure, just
Yeah.
be aware of the volatility and of the risk. So it's just about position sizing. Look, anything's investable if you position size accordingly. Like,
Now, have you
position size.
invested at all in Latin America, or you've been primarily Montenegro, Turkey?
Yeah, yeah. I have real estate in a few
Oh,
countries
Colombia,
right now.
right?
Yeah, Colombia, Mexico. Yeah.
Okay. So you're looking at El Salvador. Have you looked at Paraguay too, or no?
Yeah. I've looked at Paraguay as well.
Yeah, I mean, even though I think the Paraguayan real estate is overvalued, it's still extremely cheap relative,
It
to,
is.
American, real estate. If you come in and pay cash, and the one thing I think is going to happen, I think there's going to be, when, shit hits the fan in the Western countries, I think there's going to be a big exodus south to Latin America. And you're already seeing it. You have all these digital nomads and people. The Airbnb market in Paraguay is exploding, because when I first went down there, like, they didn't have any, and now there's actually a bunch of units. That whole industry is coming online because people will come down and stay for a month, and they don't want to stay in a hotel. So I think there could be big gains in these Latin American countries for people coming south. And you look at America, like, everyone left California and New York for Florida and Texas. Like, you already had this migration of millions and millions of people. What's the next step when the federal government, raises taxes and goes after those people, in those states? And everything's virtual, right? You can work a lot of these jobs, you can work anywhere. People are just going to be leaving Texas and Florida, for places like El Salvador, Paraguay, other, digital nomad spots that have no taxes and are, friendly and cheap for them, and I think these markets, these real estate markets, are going to, boom in some of these areas as, Americans get sick of the inflation. I'm in California, what I pay for my groceries here, I could go out to eat every night at the nicest restaurants in Paraguay. The rent, everything, is out of control. And at a certain, time period, people are just throwing in the towel and going to be, going to other locations. So
Yeah,
it's kind
I
of,
completely agree with you. I think we're going to see a flood at some point of people going from North America and Europe to Latin America. Because look, if you want to leave as a European or as a North American and go somewhere else, where can you go?
yeah.
You know, Asia is largely closed off to people moving there. It's
Yeah.
generally quite hard. What is everyone going to move to Dubai? Or go to Africa? Not
Well,
really.
yeah, no. So I just got back. I just spent, a week plus in Hong Kong and in Shenzhen, China, and and I was in Japan earlier this year. These are very homogenous societies. Like, yeah, it's cool to go vacation, but you're never going to be accepted. You're never
Yeah,
integrating into that society. You hang out with the expats there, but you're not going to be fully in the Japanese or in the Chinese deal. Where I think Latin American culture is one of the places you can actually go, be integrated, get into the community and be accepted.
Yeah.
And the people like Paraguayan people are most friendly people. They're they love to show you their country. It's a whole different dynamic. So that's why I've been I didn't want to spread myself too thin and go to Montenegro and those places. So I'm concentrating on Central and South America right now. But yeah, I mean, there's not a lot of places you can get maybe around residencies or go to Asia. I think the big ticket for people from Europe and the US is going to be Latin America. And there's going to be a lot of opportunity in these countries with all these people coming down. Right now it's kind of like the digital nomad and crypto bros. Like, wait till you start having people that are making millions of dollars and big companies moving down there. These economies with just some of these investments will take off, I think.
Yeah, and we saw it after COVID. A whole bunch of people, Westerners who didn't like their government's response, also moved to Latin America. So I mean, Mexico, case in point, a lot of Canadians in Mexico.
Yeah. I started my residency journey. I told you I was going to Panama for years. I had friends. I had no interest or didn't know why I would need a backup residency. COVID hit and I was like, I need to take it out of town. And as soon as Panama opened to international travel, like it was still crazy COVID times, I went down and secured that residency and then, did the Paraguayan thing. And anyone watching, I would say, do not wait on these residencies because right now it's cheap, easy, and fast to do these residencies where you have a flood of people coming and there's, a shoe drop, something bad happens. These, countries will probably close their borders or they're going to know they have a golden ticket and they're going to start charging you a lot more money. They're going to make you buy real estate. They're going to make you, make major investments to get these residencies once they know they have a golden ticket. Right now, people don't, see why they need to have these. And you can, do it for cheap, but you've seen it probably. All these residency programs get harder and harder and more expensive as time goes on. They're not getting cheaper and they're not, getting easier. And I think, traveling around in the future and all this stuff, it's going to be, a lot tougher to do. And you're going to want to have, a backup passport and residencies, in my opinion.
100%. 100% agree with you.
Now, have you spent any time in like Southeast Asia on your travels?
Yeah.
Where
Where did I travel? Yeah, Thailand, Cambodia, Vietnam, Malaysia, Singapore, Brunei. Yeah, just kind of that.
Okay, so
that
you've
flight.
been all over. I think someone was telling me like Cambodia had a residency program or something. Now,
Yeah,
would you
they
be
have an
interested
easy
in getting
business
one
visa.
down there, or you're concentrating elsewhere?
I'm not against it. I mean, I'm monitoring the Cambodian real estate market because it's very linked to it's a bit of a proxy to the Chinese real estate market because there was so much Chinese investment in Cambodian real estate that right now prices are essentially still tanking in Cambodia along with Chinese real estate. So I'm monitoring that because at some point I'm pretty sure there'll be some good entry points, entry prices to get in on Cambodian real estate. And the country has a lot going for itself. I really enjoyed my time there. Good
Now,
demographics.
since you're the real estate expert over here, what do you think about American real estate, and do you think the U.S. is in a real estate bubble?
I mean, look, it's the US has a lot of different markets. So I'm not an expert on US real estate. So honestly, they're much better people to talk to. But what I will say is that when mortgage rates are at 8%, um, affordability tends to decrease. So, that's not bullish.
Yeah. Well, I'm integrated into the, Southern California real estate. And, if my family looks back, we're like, if we would just bought 20 single family homes, none of us would be working anymore. But, we've bought properties and it's the value of them. It's just skyrocketed. It's a joke. You're not supposed to make this much money off of real estate. You're not supposed to, it's just, the inflation, everyone's parking money. But like, you know, where I'm at, like in Orange County, or, you know, you look at Florida, the hottest markets up or the fastest down, like Las Vegas. We own property in Vegas. I think we're just in a massive bubble. And if you look at like when COVID hit, the market was starting to go actually correct and tank. And then the government came in, they're like, hey, no one's got to pay their mortgage. Do you know that the mortgage thing, to not pay your mortgage, I thought it had ended a while ago. It officially ended like last week.
That's crazy.
So like with foreclosing on people. So there's no free market. Like as soon as like there was going to be a huge crash in real estate, it's like, oh, no one's got to pay their mortgage. You know, and that's why I don't know if we'll ever, like people ask me like, are we going to have like an '09 style crash? And I'm like, I don't know, because we have so much government intervention now. Like maybe not, because, you know, we start having a crash, they can just come in and tell the banks, hey, no one's got to pay their mortgage for 2 years. And then no property comes on the market and the prices don't move. So like right now, the market's kind of stagnant. Like the prices haven't come down and no one's buying. And like millennials my age have pretty much given up buying, you know, property. Unless your parents have money or you're hitting it out of the ballpark, you're not buying a house in Orange County, because it's $1.5 million for a crappy house. Or like a back unit townhouse is over $1 million. So, you know, like I tell people, I'm like, you know, if $1 million in Paraguay and these other countries, if you're willing to move and you're a young guy, like you could just have a kingdom down there for that kind of money. And, you know, the other thing is like people that save up and they buy these, they're, you know, they're home poor. Like you can't travel, you can't go anywhere. Like everything you're making is going towards that mortgage, insurance, and you know, fixing that house. And you're just, you know, kind of a slave to it. So for me, I had that decision. I'm like, do I just buy a crazy overpriced property? And I was like, you know what? I want to start a business. I'm going to invest in myself and travel the world. And that's kind of the direction, you know, I went, where, you know, and the other thing, if you look at the US economy, like everything's tied to real estate. Like, hey, stocks went down a little and everyone's kind of freaking out. I'm like, the time to freak out is when real estate actually comes, because, you know, we're just a giant real estate market. And when real estate goes, everything goes, because everything's tied to it. And, you know, living in Orange County during 2009, it was like a financial nuclear bomb had gone off. Like every business building was empty. We're in the packaging, we own a packaging company out here. And, you know, it affects everyone. All our customers went out of business. You know, everyone's tied to, you know, the real estate market in this region. So that's kind of the indicator I'm looking at when things are going to get dicey, is when you actually start seeing, you know, the real estate prices drop in the US. And you might say it's not correlated, but I think, you know, everything's kind of tied to the US economy. And the US goes down, you know, you're going to see a lot of deleveraging and other economies, I believe.
It's very possible. I mean, personally, I'm very happy to be investing in cash markets right now, where there isn't any leverage in the system, because there's a lot less potential downside. So, you know, when I'm buying real estate at, you know, less than $100 a square foot in a good area in Latin America, and there's absolutely no mortgages in the area, no leverage, my downside is very limited. So
yeah. I saw a video online.
So
people, there's not, I heard this about Colombia. Correct me if I'm wrong, but there's not as many mortgages as the US, and people come in and pay cash, or they have very little mortgages there. So you can't have this financial, you know, real estate meltdown, because people don't owe a lot of money.
Yeah, because like interest rates are, like mortgage rates are, I don't know, 10, 13%. So like who's going to borrow? Like no one.
Now,
so
with Colombia, do you think the Colombia, because like I've been watching the last couple of years, like everyone's making videos, Airbnb, you know, Colombia, and you're probably in a lot earlier than that. And I was watching, like back in the day, I would watch like Rebel Capitalist, and he was like one of the first kind of guys going down there and doing, you know, Colombian, you know, real estate before it's popular. Now, do you think it's like, you know, blown up, you know, a lot in the last couple of years, and it's going to come down a little, or do you think it just has a long way to go? Because I see a lot of people talking about investing there right now.
Look, I mean, the reality is that the base was extremely low. When you first heard of it from Rebel Capitalist, I mean, no one was doing anything there in terms of real estate. He was one of the few. So the base is very low, one. Two, tourism is just booming like mad in
Yeah.
Medellin. Like international arrivals at the airport in like 2022 versus 2021 was up like almost 60%. I mean, it is booming. So yes, we'll probably see cap rates decrease a little bit as there's more supply of Airbnbs, as in any market for sure. But that's when the way you approach your investment is really important. You probably don't want to be doing the basic apartment that everyone is doing.
Yeah.
That's not going to work. So when you make an investment, you want to make sure that it's something that has something that, like an apartment that has something unique, a key selling point, a key selling feature that would target a bit of a niche, and then you're not competing with other people, and then you'll do just fine. So it's
Yeah.
really about the strategy,
So it's
how you
getting
enter
it's
the
getting a little
market.
bit more competitive, and you
Yeah,
can't just, and not everything's just gonna work. Everything you throw on the wall, you're gonna
yeah.
have to find the right places, because there are a lot of people doing it now. Did they end the Colombian residency program with that new president? And can you fill us on how you get residency, if it's possible anymore?
Yeah, so it's not the new president that changed it, it's the old one, but then it got implemented when the new president took office. Um, but essentially, before there was a special investor visa with a bit of a fast track. You got permanent residency immediately, and then you could get citizenship, etc. It was all pretty easy. Now, none of that. Essentially, you need to buy real estate for about like $93,000. This gives you residency. It's more of a migrant visa, they call it, but it's a pretty weak document in the sense it's not a no-show residency, in the sense that they do not want you to be out of the country for more than 6 months. So every 6 months you need to check in to keep it active, which is a bit much, unless you live in Miami and it's like really easy with a ton of flights every day. So it doesn't quite make sense anymore. And the path to citizenship is like 10 years now.
Yeah,
So
that's what I read. So I was just confirming, and like,
yeah,
because everyone wants the Colombian residency, and I'm like, man, if they just had like a, kind of like the Panama friendly nations, it would be so popular.
it
But
would.
yeah, I was going down. I went down to Panama. I mean, Colombia, like, I don't know, like 6+ years ago, and I knew nothing about the country, and I met up with this Colombian doctor local, and just had the most epic experience. And I was in all these places, like I went to like I think it's Tirona National Park, all these places, and there was like Santa Marta, or there was like no development there. There was like maybe like one or two little hotels. Like when we were at the entrance of the national park, we were literally staying in like this like hut with like hammocks and stuff, like, and I was like, this place is incredible, and I'm like, there's gonna be so much opportunity. I'm like, you just build a hotel right here, you're gonna kill it. And and it was like, right, I think when the first season like Narcos that came out, everyone's like, it's so dangerous down there and all this stuff, and I was like, dude, I never had a problem, people were super friendly. And I'm like, once people find out about this place, and then sure enough, boom, like the tourism industry over the last couple years is absolutely exploded there. People find out how cheap it is, how fun it is. um, I'm definitely going to try to make it a trip down there. Now, have you spent any time in Brazil?
A bit in Rio. Yeah,
Okay, this is the one country I haven't been. I'm gonna this
that's fine. It's a lot of fun.
No, I haven't been back to Colombia in a while, and I haven't been to Brazil yet, but I've pretty much been everywhere else. So I'm probably gonna, in the next couple weeks, go to El Salvador, and then I'm gonna do another big trip and do probably Punta del Este, Brazil, Paraguay, and then back. Um, I really like Paraguay. I couldn't live there year round. There's not enough to do, but for a week or two, Paraguay is totally awesome. I got a lot of friends there. One of my favorite cities is Buenos Aires. And if they change the economy there, that is going to be like one cool spot. They got a lot of stuff going on there. Where I wasn't a huge fan of is I went to Santiago, Chile on my last trip. And from what I've seen online and all this stuff, I thought it was going to be like this, super clean, rich, city. And I had like really high expectations, and I land, and it was like graffiti on every wall, trash littered throughout the streets. Like I went to their national museum, like the bathrooms didn't work. I was like in shock. And it wasn't what I was expecting, but like the whole region and everything is like it's just absolutely beautiful. And I talked to some of the locals, like people that live down there, they're like no one stays in Santiago anymore. Everyone just goes to south to like Patagonia and stuff. But that place has a lot of opportunity, but it kind of seems like it just got run into the ground since COVID is kind of what I've seen. Now, have you spent any time in Chile?
I haven't. I haven't been
Okay.
actually.
Beautiful country though. Beautiful country. Now have you done like Punta del Este in Uruguay yet?
Not yet. I have not done Uruguay.
Either have I. That's on my next trip. Now, I might meet you down in El Salvador. What
Yeah,
type of real
beers.
estate are you looking at, and where in El Salvador are you looking at?
I don't know yet. I haven't prepped my trip.
Okay, okay.
I don't,
Because
I don't want to just be talking crap.
okay. Because I was just curious because the La Union is where they're gonna build that Bitcoin city, and I'm like curious if like the prices of like the raw real estate because that there's nothing there, so that's why it's cool. They're like we're gonna pick this region pretty much from scratch. There's like a town and build it out, tax free, all this stuff. So I'm curious if like the real estate, the raw land there is like already extremely overvalued in anticipation of this and it's not worth it, or things haven't gone crazy because I have seen that like the prices have actually, considerably, gone up in El Salvador. But if you look at the long-term trajectory, if they do what they said they're going to do, these prices are still extremely, extremely cheap. And with the amount of people that could be, coming in to this region, and and I think all the Bitcoiners and crypto guys got wiped out this last year. You go 69,000 to 14,000, and they don't have a lot of capital right now. But if Bitcoin pumps and it goes over 100,000 again, all these guys are gonna have a lot of money. They've been hodling. They want to go spend some of it. They're gonna buy some real estate, have some fun. I think El Salvador is gonna be a big ticket for
Yeah.
a lot of people. Now, are
Yeah.
you into Bitcoin at all, or are you a skeptic?
No, I'm fine. I'm fine with crypto. I'm no issue whatsoever with crypto. I just choose not to talk about crypto because it's not my people don't follow me for crypto, so they're not going to get any insight by talking about crypto to me. Like the only insight I can share in terms of crypto is that it's very practical, it's very useful when you want to go past capital controls. Because I do a lot of business in countries with complicated banking and capital controls and all that,
Instead of
and then
USDT or
crypto is just perfect. So just as a tool, I love it. As a speculation, I'm not gonna opine on it.
yeah. No, in people probably don't understand how bad the banking system in like Latin America is
Yeah,
and moving money in and out. And I'm like, Bitcoin, USDT. I'm only Bitcoin. I think most of these other cryptos are scams and pump and dumps and stuff like that. But yeah, for moving money, especially with countries with weak banking systems, it is the total. It is the ticket. Now, I follow some of these gurus on, Twitter, and they're like, oh, I got 20, bank accounts and all this stuff. And I'm just like, one guy sent me the email yesterday, open the bank account in Panama. I'm like, I can offer you that service too. I was like, Panama's not doing good. You don't want to park a bunch of cash in Panama right now. And I was like, for me, for banking, it's just like countries I'm doing business in or I'm resident, I have a bank account. You don't need 20 bank accounts, in my opinion. Now, where do you recommend if someone wants to open, international banking? Like, what are the best places, and like, what do you use for, banking?
okay, that would be a whole podcast.
Yeah. Do you do
If
any banking in Latin America?
uh, Panama,
Okay, Panama. I mean,
yeah,
Panama is
Panama,
pretty much the only place I think in Latin America you can have like an international bank account that's worth anything.
Panama, Uruguay are the only viable options in Latin America,
Yeah, I
definitely.
mean, I was trying to open a bank account in Paraguay, and it was pulling teeth.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, no. Like
Not
banking does not
not a
exist in
fun
Paraguay.
experience unless you're gonna do a business and you want to build credit and buy, real estate. It's a pain, and you really don't need all these, international, accounts. So, well, it was great having you on. I'm gonna message you. Maybe we'll meet up and tour some real estate in El Salvador. I've been meaning to go down. I know they had a big, Bitcoin conference last week, and I kind of didn't want to go down when like it was gonna be super touristy and all these people were going down. I want to be down there with when it's normal reality and it's not crazy for the conference. So I think when you're going a couple of weeks, it's going to be a big hit, and it's summer down there. It's going to be super, super nice. And I want to see firsthand, like what's real, what's hype with the whole, Bitcoin economy there. And, even though Bitcoin took a huge hit, the PR they got from it and the tourism outweighed any losses they had, because every Bitcoin bro, crypto bro goes there. And once they have money, I think their tourism is going to take off. I just saw they just launched a new library, new international airport. It seems like kind of an up and coming thing. And you just look at all these other Latin countries. It's, I don't see anything happening. You don't see public works happening. You don't see, a lot of big things happening. So this is kind of exciting. And I hope, they lead by example and all these other countries adopt, because Latin America is such a great spot, and I think it has so much potential. So we'll keep in touch. I really appreciate your time. As someone that kind of makes the travel content, I watch your stuff. I don't watch a lot of people's stuff, but I take cues from you, and you have very knowledgeable on all this real estate and international travel, and you've been more places than I have, and I love watching you. So thanks again for your time, and we'll stay in touch, and we'll do a follow-up interview in the future. And things are getting crazy, and I'm sure we're gonna have some interesting stuff to talk about in the future.
For sure. My pleasure, Travis. Thank you. I really appreciate it.
All right, have a good one.